and thanks for joining us today for our 24th episode of the Restaurant Dealmaker Show, where we discuss pertinent topics regarding the food and beverage industry with top industry professionals. My guest co-host today is Dean Biersch, who I've had the pleasure of knowing for over 20 years. I originally met Dean at one of my listing sites in San Francisco, a restaurant I was trying to sell at the corner of 9th and Lincoln Avenues across the street from the Golden Gate Park in San Francisco. And Dean had some interest in it, and that was the first time we met. Unfortunately, he didn't do the deal. And subsequently, Dean has responded to several of my listings over the years. And although we've always had a great rapport, we've never done a deal together, but who knows? Hopefully things will change in the future. But, and in fact, that is not true because we're doing a deal today, right, Dean?
That's right.
Yeah. So
here we are.
It's not going to generate the kind of dollars we normally do on a sale. But anyway, this is a different type of deal for sure. This is probably even more meaningful than any purchase deal. That's for sure. So recently, I had the opportunity of reconnecting with Dean at the Western Regional Food Service Show, which was held in August at the Anaheim Convention Center. And he was like the first guy at our booth. We were an exhibitor. And I've always respected Dean over the years for his ambitiousness, his progressiveness, his business acumen. And it's just been a real pleasure to know him and have him as the co-host today. Dean founded Gordon Biersch Brewery along with his business partner, Dan Gordon. And in 1997, Dean and Dan built a major brewing facility in San Jose where all of Gordon Biersch keg and bottled beers originate, even to this day, I believe. Is that the case, Dean, even today?
Yeah, that's true on Taylor Street.
And Dean will discuss in detail the Gordon Biersch story during our conversation. Currently, Dean is the owner and founder of HopMonk Tavern with 3 Northern California locations in Sonoma, Sebastopol, and Novato, as well as Twin Oaks, Roadhouse, and Pengrove. These venues capitalize on fine craft beers, top live entertainment, excellent food and service, and a beer garden in historic settings. So Dean will be discussing this in just shortly. Just a procedural matter. If you have questions during the show, please go to the question bar, type in your question, and we will try to respond to it during the show. If not, we'll get back to you immediately after the show. So with all that being said, I, at this point, would like to introduce to you Dean Biersch. And I'd like to start by asking Dean a question, which was, what were you doing in your early career prior to meeting Dan Gordon, your future partner in Gordon Biersch?
Well, first of all, it's great to be here, Stephen, to finally get this conversation rolling. I'm looking forward to it. And hospitality, to answer it in one word, I've always been in restaurants or some kind of food and beverage activity, and I've really not known anything differently. It started in LA as a 15-year-old working at the Arboretum flipping burgers. And as I advanced, I went on to college and mixed food and beverage with that in Southern California. Probably the most influential upbringing for me was at the Beverly Hilton. I had a good surf buddy whose dad ran the Beverly Hilton in Beverly Hills. It was 5 ballrooms. It was European style French service. It was televised events, large Golden Globe type parties. And I got that real formal business service environment, the real European style, in those early days in Beverly Hills. So I always look to that as the foundation, the fundamental place where I learned how important the details are in the service sequence and just how to approach tables, how to have discussions, and how to lead groups ultimately, because I became a manager there in a pretty short time.
So what happened after your stint there?
Well, after that, I moved to San Francisco, where I was from, where I was born, and I was looking to finish college and also work. And I worked in a brasserie downtown. You might remember on Kearney Street, the old Brasserie Chambord.
Yes.
And I really worked my tail off to get a job in there. It was coveted. You could go in for maybe 3 or 4 hours at the most in the middle of the day. This is when they were still doing cocktail lunches, and you'd sell bottles at lunchtime with beautiful swordfish Verre Blanc. It was just a great opportunity to go to school and still make a reasonable living. And then my last job after a couple of those kind of gigs was with Hornblower Yachts when they first came to San Francisco on the waterfront. And I became a food and beverage director there over a few years, and kind of learned that it's all in the production. It's 95% anticipation in terms of how to unwind a great event or a big party. Don't leave the wedding cake at the dock. There were a lot of lessons. And that was a great experience for me.
That's great. Great background.
Yeah.
So how did you and Dan meet, and how did you decide to go in the brewing business?
Well, I could put one more step in there because at the time I was working at Hornblower Yachts, I had a family friend who we would go up and visit her ranch in Hopland. And that was about a 2-hour drive north of San Francisco. And it turns out right at the 90-degree turn, this is the most favorable thing that's probably ever happened in my life, was the first brew pub that was built on the West Coast, Mendocino Brewing Company. This would be like 1984 in that range. And I had already been to Europe and tasted beer while backpacking, and been through several pubs in London, and had some experience with the CAMRA. The Campaign for Real Ale was the early movement in Great Britain. Early beer resurgence of beer, sort of craft beers coming back into awareness from the bigger beers that were out there at the time. And so I kind of had that tucked in the back of my mind. And once I tasted the beer at Mendocino Brewing, kind of a light bulb went off. They did a great job of producing the beer, but maybe they weren't quite as focused on restaurant operations and just the development of their project. And I could see the opportunity, and more importantly, I could see that brew pubs, brewing on site and selling beer on site was going to become a restaurant niche, and I certainly did sense that it could be big, but I had no idea, the kind of legs that it really did have, and how fortunate I was to be kind of seeing all this in its nascent phase. It was just starting to happen.
Sure.
So I went back to San Francisco, and I wrote a business plan, and a family friend, he's my godfather, actually, he's since passed, Robert Caro from the East Bay, was a big real estate guy. And we were very close, and he followed my career from the Hilton and some of the other things that I had done. And he had said, if I ever generate a concept, let's talk about doing something. He was an entrepreneur. And I took this idea to him, and I wrote a business plan, and I started getting it out to an investment group, mostly in the East Bay. And this name Dan Gordon kept coming up from 2 or 3 of the guys through that group. And Dan had gone to Berkeley, and I believe he was majoring in engineering, but he was an exchange student at the time in Munich, in Freising, right outside of Munich. And I reached out to Dan and told him what my plans were. And he let me know that he had written a plan. And so he was he was doing his final test. He was still engaged in school when he came out. We met in San Francisco at the only brew pub in San Francisco at the time. It was San Francisco Brewing Company. This guy named Alan Paul that had that place. And so Dan and I met there, and we had 2 business plans, and we liked each other, and there was a lot of synergy that I don't think we really understood very much about it that in those first meetings. But we took a long weekend and we wrote one plan from the two and decided to go into business with each other.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So Gordon Biersch obviously became a major operation, and during its peak, I mean, you had how many different brew pub locations did you have?
I would say about
Ballpark?
18 or 19, and then 20, 25 or so ballpark and airport concession destinations. We did a lot of work with Host Marriott to roll those out.
Right. And you had a wholesale arm as well?
Well, we did once we built the major brewery in San Jose that you referred to earlier. That's 125,000 square foot regional brewery.
Wow.
But it really started the brewing part started in Emeryville, and we had it's kind of amazing. You know, Dan when he graduated, when I got to know him, he was graduating from Weinstefan, which is a technical university at Munich. He was getting two degrees at the same time, one the brew master's program and the other the brewery engineering program, and these are all in German. So it's kind of a daunting achievement. He's a remarkable guy in that sense that he could take all that on and still want to come back and do what we did in California. But to do it, we had just built the large brew house and brewery at the Hills Plaza location. That was our third location. It was kind of coming off Broadway to on Broadway. We were under the spotlight. It was a huge property. It was a big investment. And it went exceptionally well from the beginning, to the point where we had interest from Peter McGowan and the Giants and the ballpark to do our beer down there. And so what Dan figured out he could do was to produce the wort, which is which is the core malt level of the brewing process. That's done in the brew house. He had that. We bought a dairy truck from Peninsula Creamery, and we'd pull up the dairy truck at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. and pump the wort into the truck, drive it over the bridge to Emeryville, where we had a warehouse and all the conditioning tanks and lagering tanks and eventually kegging equipment, and finish the beer over there. So all that was strictly draft, and it went strictly to Candlestick Park and the ballpark. That's how we got involved in our first stadium operation. It's also how we kind of released the draft product outside of the four walls of the businesses that we already owned.
Got it. So where did you get the financing to build this to develop the operation to the scope
well
it became?
The early stores, we did it all with the same initial investment group. So some of them were just local guys in Silicon Valley and friends of Dan. I mean, remarkably, when we look back on this, the raising the money wasn't the hardest part. The idea was very fresh and very interesting to a lot of people. So we raised, for the Palo Alto location, we raised a little over $1 million in 1987. And then there was a little crash right at that time, if you remember, after we had secured that funding. So we more or less dodged a bullet there. And, you know, I've always said one thing that I understand looking back that made a difference for us is we had a lot of success in the beginning. We came out swinging, and we had invested a lot of stuff that we sincerely care about, like, for example, leaded crystal beer steins from Germany. I mean, everything we were serving the beer in was on the par, you know, was legit. And we did the research, and I loved doing all the graphic design for this. And the imaging, and we came out at a level that we were able to sustain for a long time. So San Jose, which became the second location, was kind of an unlikely choice for a lot of people. They expected us to go to the city first, but I felt that we needed more volume experience, just more restaurant experience, more service experience. You have to do every day. It's not a finished product in our profession. It's something that needs to be repeatable, and I felt like we needed to run it out farther. And I'm glad we did that. But we also discovered an awesome market in San Jose. We knew we were getting a lot of 408 reservations and interest in our property, in Palo Alto. So it wasn't a complete surprise. But as it turns out, we were right on the cusp of the regeneration of downtown San Jose, and we kind of rode in the lead, and the city got behind us, and it just became a remarkable experience.
Yeah. Wow. So when did you guys decide to sell the business? And
well, the other
make that
step in
decision?
between is when we raised a bunch of money so we could build a whole lot more of these. So after we did San Francisco, I wanted to show that we could run a place, do a place that's an airplane right away. So I had some experience in Southern California. I went to high school down there. I knew the Pasadena area, and the Old Town section there was going through a lot of redevelopment. And I kind of liked that. I thought LA was ready for craft beer in 1994 or so. And as it turns out, in retrospect, Dan and I think clearly were pretty far ahead of the market in both Los Angeles and San Diego. And that was a huge eye opener for me over time, how long it was for LA to really catch up to what was happening in Northern California with beer. We ended up doing a very successful project in San Diego. But still, I put us maybe a couple of years ahead of Stone Brewing, and the whole renaissance down there really has come more recently, not back in the 90s when we were doing this stuff. So it's, I think it was just interesting to watch the trend of craft beer roll out in California, definitely from Northern California going south.
Right.
But and then raising money, once we did that, we went to Honolulu and we built the first brew pub in the state of Hawaii. We went out on Aloha Tower. So I think it was the first time a sizable brewery had been built on a pier. I don't know if that's true or not, but it felt pretty unique to us.
Wow.
We got kind of into a bidding situation with ESPN Cafe. They were going to take this signature property on the end of the pier, and we combined that plus another property, and we had a business that ran for 25 years or so out there. And like I say, the first brew pub in the state. Dan figured all the engineering out, and you can imagine sourcing everything from the mainland, all the challenges of production out there. But we overcame all that stuff, and that was a great one too. It was a lot of fun.
So what year was that you did the Hawaii?
So that would have been the 96, right in there. I'm terrible with dates, but right, 95, 96.
I see.
This was the time where we started generating some interest in expanding the restaurant in a really significant, large way. And we ended up getting an investment partner out of Las Vegas, a family that had come up in the gaming business. And eventually they got involved in the UFC business that came after us, and that's been sold. But we were getting what we felt pretty strongly about. One was it was about an $18 million raise. we were going to be able to expand, what we did to the places that we wanted with hospitality partners that understood where investments needed to be made. And we got on great with the family, and we ended up building in Seattle and Las Vegas, a huge place in Las Vegas, San Diego, couple more in LA, and kind of on and on from there. We got involved with concessions and airports, and then ballparks, with the beer that we had started with Peter McGowan. It's kind of a funny story here. He sat us down in the beginning and said, "I really want you to bring food with the beer," and he really insisted on seeing, I don't know, 6 or 8 items, one of which was our garlic fries, which we had put on the first menu.
Oh, yeah.
And we got those into Candlestick Park, and nobody, including Dan and I, anticipated that the smell of the garlic fries and the sort of culture of, if you eat garlic, I eat garlic,
Right.
just spread like wildfire.
Yeah.
And we eventually did a product and story. I mean, that thing just blew up. They're in every stadium in America now. And if we could have trademarked them, and we tried,
Yeah.
I'd be doing this from a remote island somewhere right now.
Did you actually come up with the concept of garlic fries, or was that
Yeah.
really?
Well, Dan
that
came
idea?
up with this in Germany with one of his. He had the foreign students had a little group collective, and they would meet on a regular basis. And apparently, he came up with that recipe. I remember doing it with our very first chef, Jamie Carpenter, in a little San Mateo, his little apartment, and kind of working the kinks out on that. But that we came out, they were popular in the restaurant right away, but we just had no idea what was going to happen when we put them, as an item at the ballpark.
Yeah, I know my wife loves the product.
Yeah.
I know
Right.
anybody
Good to hear.
that loves it. It's
good to hear.
Great product. So you guys actually at one point sold the business. Is that not the case?
So, well, we got into a challenge because at the time we had 6 restaurants operating in California, and that was the maximum amount of units that you could have with beer brewing on site in the state of California. And we went up to Sacramento, actually, and shook a lot of hands and took a lot of meetings and tried to see if we could move that. And ultimately didn't have a lot of success. And so we had already funded the growth of the brewery. It was a huge facility, beautiful facility. So we needed to divide the company from the restaurant group and the production brewery. And I stayed with the restaurant group. But then that was sold to a group in the Southeast, and I had to make a decision about whether or not I was going to be involved in the transition or stay with the brewery, which, was very heady days in those days. It was all getting beer on the shelves at Safeway and Albertsons and every other place you can think of, and into restaurant groups and a lot of things like that. So at that time, I moved to Sonoma, where I live now. This is 20-something years ago, 22 years ago. And it was one of the great periods of the arc of work for me, because I got to go out to restaurants, especially being a beer guy in the wine country. I got to go out to restaurants, really talk about beer, introduce them to our beers, basically be a beer guy in the wine industry zone. So that, like I said, that was very satisfying for me, and it kind of informed what became HopMonk. As I decided.
How do you come up with that name?
Well, first of all, you wanted a name you can own, so I was looking for something original. For me, it is hops in the beer making process are kind of the definitive ingredient in the beer in terms of what a brewer wants to do. I mean, everything, yeast and malt, impact this also. But for example, the IPAs that we all drink and love now are very hop forward. The Keller beer that is my house beer that I have Dan make for us is an unfiltered Pilsner. Very clean, very crisp, much more lightly hopped, more subtly hopped. So what a brewer does with hops is one thing. The monks of Eastern Europe primarily were the ones who really were able to standardize a scientific production process to recreate the flavors and the yeast in the beer to give that consistency year to year. So they brought the science to brewing. And so this for me is the art and the science of brewing, HopMonk. That's where I got the name.
Oh, that's great. And so the first HopMonk opened in Sebastopol, right?
Sebastopol, yeah. Beautiful historic building,
Yeah, it's a beautiful
1905
building.
stone and timber,
Beautiful.
classic.
Yeah, it is a beautiful
Yeah,
building.
thank you.
And live entertainment is such a vital part of your concept. And how do you deal with all these, challenging personalities in the entertainment world and all the logistics that go into booking entertainment and et cetera, and how that whole entertainment piece works into your concept, which I know is a very important part of your concept.
Yeah,
So,
well, I'll start with the why. I mean, the
yes.
why you do that and put up with all that angst that you're just describing, which is very accurate, is because it gives what you do a signature feel event to event. And I'm not just a tavern, not just a beer place, not just whatever category you want to put it in. Music changes that. So it's the most authentic thing we can possibly do on a fresh basis week to week. So I'd start with that. And, we have now done 8 or 9 or 10,000 shows probably
Wow.
between the two venues that we have
Wow.
and the offsite events and other things that we get involved with, and all the beer garden music, which supports really your local artists. So every town that you go to, has a group of musicians, some professional, some not, some retired professional, whatever it is. So we tried to cultivate it from the ground up and really be grounded in being local by working with local artists. Yes, you don't always know what you're getting. You don't always know what you're in for. But over time, I now have a music director and 2 talent buyers, and we're doing, some pretty sophisticated shows, and shows that are up to 400 to 700 outdoors in our Novato location, for example. Wow. So it's been a natural progression. I think the one thing that I took from the hospitality business into the music business was in hospitality, if you can make the host feel special, if you can make the office person that's booking the event, that's coming to your restaurant, feel special and taken care for, and really that you're responsive, that's winning. In music, if you can make the artist feel like this is a little piece of home away from home on many different levels, through food, through a green room setup, through a writer, the special writer that they have, through room reservations, better rooms, quieter rooms, whatever. If you can make the artist feel great, you have a good chance of getting a great show. Yeah. And that's just those work together. So I love the music because I get turned on to a lot of new stuff. And also I get to know a lot of these people that are touring. I have a lot of respect for artists that can go 4 and 5 and 6 nights a week on the road during holidays and rainy seasons and all the rest of it. It's kind of remarkable what they do and what they give when they do come. So
sure,
big fan.
That's cool. So what's your favorite part of the business?
I think I think it's just setting the table and getting out of the way and watching it go down.
That's nice.
Because I honestly believe like 95% of the show, 95% of doing what we do is in preparation and planning. And it's really fun to just kind of slither into the background when the business starts to tip over and hit an energy level that is unique. And I used to do this in San Jose. We had a great thing where we could go up on the roof. Our building that we were in was abandoned, and the downtown was still turning around. It was an old office building. And sometimes things would just get so haywire. We'd have 600 people on the property that the only thing to do that really made sense was to go up on top of the building and look down on it and just kind of marvel at what was happening. We would take moments, and I'm so glad I did that because those days are gone, for one. But it was really something to take a business to a level and then let it tip over to kind of overdrive. And of course, all your servers are happy in those environments. There's a lot of money being made and a lot of product going out the door, and kind of all the stars get lined up.
Well, you've had a very diversified set of experiences and challenges in your career. And what's been the single most gratifying event that has occurred in your career, and what has been the biggest challenge of your career?
The most gratifying is really hard for me to put a finger on because I just think I'm always, you never arrive in this business. How can you? You're not a filmmaker. You don't get to finish your film and promote it for a year and then hopefully it has great legs and you keep making money. It's something that we have to go back to a lot. But I would say the most gratifying is an easy one. And that's that COVID up here was like everywhere, a huge challenge. And I have a director of operations here, Javier Silva. We've been working together now for 5 years. And I mean, we caught ourselves, the challenges, the things that we had to do. We made decisions to keep our salary personnel on through the whole thing. We had a lot of tough choices to make along the way, but we almost caught ourselves a few times saying how fun it was because it was so gnarly, it's so hard, so entrepreneurial, so of the moment that we don't get that a lot and not compounded like that. So it really challenged us. And I think one of the ways that we navigated through it, we were very fortunate to have outdoor spaces established because beer gardens are really my favorite part of what we do. So we were fortunate to have that as a lead in. Our business could be outside in versus inside out. But just the opportunity to take these things on one after the next and keep changing and modifying and coming out the other end. We were very fortunate to have that experience. And like I say, at times we were surprised how fun it was.
So after going through COVID, I would assume the economic challenges we face today with, shortage of employees, these ever spiraling increase in costs is probably just everyday stuff for you. It's probably not a big issue, I guess.
It's brutal. I wish it were every day. I mean, I wish I didn't have to stare that labor number down the way that we do now. But, the entry level wage is not the minimum wage that my class of business people grew up with. In the early days, the minimum wage was to get you under the roof, and then you would demonstrate your value to the enterprise. And guys like me would take people that had skills and get out of their way and take them up the ladder. And that was a really fun thing to be able to do, discover young talent and nurture it, grow it, give them opportunities between properties and all those things. So now it's different because the bottom has been brought up to $20 an hour, basically.
Right.
And we have to think about our business differently. I know this is a hot subject for a lot of people, but I think it's really changing the way we actually do business. I think you're going to see a lot more counter service and self-service and less full service. There's some good things on both. I don't think full service will ever go away, but you know, your labor number. I used to buy businesses that would run the kind of labor I run now because I knew they couldn't possibly survive. You know, I would start to get interested when I saw them hit above 40% labor costs. So this is a real problem. You know, this is a real challenge to our industry. One of the reasons over the last couple of years that we've gone into food trucks is we're nimble. We can go do this show, that thing. We can do this event. We can package it. We can control the food costs and other associated costs, and we know we can be profitable. But when you add, you know, the real estate costs to the labor costs and all the rest of it, it's getting more and more challenging for guys like me with big full-service restaurants out there.
So what's the scope of your food truck business at this point?
Right now, we're doing some big events like Bottle Rock, and we have the Raceway here in Sonoma. We're getting involved with them. We're doing some concessions. We're doing catering. The trucks are busy every weekend, and then we do all the local farmers markets. So we'll do the Sonoma market, Santa Rosa, Windsor. We do a Benicia market. So yeah, there's a lot of business. It is a little tricky finding out which ones and which days of which events. The California Fair, for example. But these are great opportunities, and if you're nimble, you've got to lean in.
So on the food truck menu, you have your core HopMonk menu and beer selection. Is that what the menu?
We try to do that. We can't get the beer in as many locations as we like, just from a licensing point of view. But people are always asking us for our beer, of course, and we can do that at private events.
Yes,
we do full bars too, but yeah, a lot of it is representative of what you find in the tavern, but then we try to knock off some other ideas, and we bring a lot of Mexican food into the mix, depending on who the audience is. We've had a lot of luck with quesadilla, which is sort of raging throughout the state in the last couple of years, and we love doing that kind of food with beer. It's awesome.
Cool. So you've obviously had many successful accomplishments in your life and your career. Is there one single accomplishment that has been most meaningful to you?
The most meaningful thing to me is that I have worked for myself for 35 or 36 years.
Yeah.
And I've tried to be very active through the whole process. I never felt like I was going to have a career that I start and finish, retire, and then start traveling, for example. I've always got the next trip in front of me, and I've always had a lot of fun along the way, or tried to. So I think that's the greatest. I'm raising my family. I've got 3 grown kids now, so.
That's terrific. I know we talked a little bit about that, and you did some very challenging travels. And can you just highlight some?
Well, if you're talking physically,
yes,
I love all the
trips.
travel. I love the travel mistake stories in the books, about things gone awry. But last year I had a great trip to Nepal, And
Right.
I did a 20-day trek through what they call the three passes, which are these passes that lead into Everest Base Camp and get you up close to 18,000 feet. And I'm just so glad I did it. There were a lot of question marks, and there's a lot of gear related stuff. You go halfway around the world.
Wow.
You can't get sick before, but I'm so glad I did it because it was just a remarkable experience, and I had just the time of my life. It was awesome.
Yeah, that sounded very
Yeah.
exciting. That's why I wanted to bring it up.
And Kathmandu was a great city to spend a couple of days on each side too. So the whole experience was exotic and fun and
And
high
how was the
altitude.
beer over there?
Not so special.
You must have
Charitably.
extremely high standards for beer,
Yeah, I put the beer down for that trip. Yeah.
for sure. So
Yeah.
technology is obviously changing everybody's lives, and certainly it's having an
Yeah.
impact in the food and beverage industry. And how has technology impacted your operation? And
Huge. Well, I mean, for us, I mentioned we're outside in and we're beer garden first. I mean, our beer gardens are 175 to 200 people when they're full. And so technology is essential. The handheld, we tried for years. I was an Aloha subscriber for years, and they kept promising they were going to get to a handheld version of POS and never quite got there. But we have the Toast system now, and it's absolutely integral to serving outdoor spaces. So you're firing drinks, appetizers, and whatever it be at the table. And, by the time you get to the bar, there's a good chance that those drinks will be up. And so just timing wise, it's been a major game changer. And then we love all the reports that we can generate, on the fly, and the managers, I can see everything going on. And it's the same with all the cameras on our property. We need cameras, maybe 30 per property,
wow.
just to manage liability issues, trip and falls. Little things have come up over the years, and we've had many times where we can use a little tape to set the story correctly. So we take advantage of that. And then, all the reports that can be generated now, we used to crunch numbers for 7 to 10 days and then look at a P&L, and that was quick, and now we get them in a day or two, and we can analyze our business, I think, a lot more efficiently. So we try to embrace technology. The office side of it, we've gone back and forth with Apple and different options over the years, but I land on Apple. Coming from Silicon Valley, I buy all their devices, so we take advantage of all of that too. Creative side.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So you're held in very high esteem in the industry, and I'm exposed to various leaders in the hospitality industry throughout California. And if you had to quantify what are your key leadership skills that you practice and to gain the great respect that you've garnered in the industry?
I appreciate that. I mean, honestly, I think the core thing, the first thing I do when I talk to a new assemblage of employees that we're opening a new property or we're taking on some new venture is the notion of mutual respect, that everybody on the team, and team is such a big word now, but
Yep.
that everybody uses, but everybody that's in a work group is the same and should be and deserves to be treated with respect at all times under any conditions. And we get
Absolutely.
challenged, and things happen, and people can get ugly in front of you. Lots of things can happen in the hospitality environment, lots of unanticipated things.
Absolutely.
But mutual respect needs to be the core value above all. The other is I really have always tried to take responsibility for assisting the careers of the people that are moving through the enterprise, and supporting those people that, demonstrate excellence in a sustained way. And so being very candid about how we operate. And if I could just use one notion, something that I end up talking to managers about all the time is you're going to have problems that surface in business. And the thing that you can best do is to sit down with the person, articulate the problem, get the buy-in, give them a chance to get it right. I've had so many people that were way off the rails and maybe even a bad attitude. And I have that preliminary conversation and they bloom into excellence.
Sure.
And I've had things go the other way too. Some of the people that I think are the most qualified, the most experienced, disappoint. But what you need to do, if you have an issue, you need to get it out. You need to get the feedback and the buy-in. And then if that person, for whatever reason, chooses not to show up on time, and you've been talking about tardiness, that's just nagging and disrespectful, and they choose after you've had a couple of these conversations and allowed them to have chances, those people end up not working for this enterprise.
Got it.
So, hey, we can still be friends. We are friends.
Yes.
It's not personal.
Right.
But you demonstrated that you don't fit with this group.
Yeah.
Good luck. And if I can help you get to the next step, I will, but not here.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, they got to be part of the team. It's a team.
Yeah.
It's a team event. Yeah, working together in a restaurant.
So maybe over time, I mean, I feel like I've got a lot of people that work around me that really do want to excel in their own ways and bring their own people up. And when it's working, that's what you get.
Sure. So do you have any future plans for growth at this point?
No, but like, I think you would know. I mean, I always look at everything. This is what I've always done.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate with HopMonk in the location here in Sonoma, where I am today, Sebastopol, we mentioned before, and Novato in northern Marin County, to get those in that period 2007 to 2009, where landlords were really feeling the pinch. Mm-hmm. And in all three cases, I went in and was able to put a rent structure there that kind of stopped the bleeding, but was very favorable for HopMonk long term. So I've been able to have properties that we can invest a lot of money in because we know we have them for X amount of time.
Got it.
I'm waiting for those days to return.
Yes. you aren't finding
something's got to give.
You aren't finding landlords to be more flexible and more reasonable in
not lately. I mean, not as much as I would have thought. Post-COVID, I thought honestly that we would be, I mean, very regrettably, so many people, we've seen the businesses go away.
Yes.
But a lot of those lease structures haven't been modified to reflect where we really are and the state of doing business in California, the challenges to a full service restaurant operator.
Oh yeah.
And that's just going to be hard to explain to any landlord. But so.
Okay. Well, I very much appreciate your candidness and straightforward approach. And I can understand why you've been so successful all your career. You obviously have a lot of empathy in dealing with people. You've gained some tremendous experience with all the different, different operations you've had over the years, and you're a real asset to the industry. And it's a real pleasure, talking to you. And I'm sure the guests listening to this show will, I'm sure, agree with me, and very much appreciate your time. And today, if people want to get in touch with you, Dean, what's the best way to reach you generally?
Well, through LinkedIn is probably the best way, but also just directly to my HopMonk email address, dean@hopmonk, HOPMONK.com. I'm not the most influential social influencer out there, but you can reach out to me directly, and I'll be happy to follow up.
Okay, thank you, Dean. Just a brief announcement. We have some upcoming Dealmaker shows. Our March show is John Sangmeister. Do you know John by any chance?
I don't know,
Blacksmiths in
John.
Long Beach. Yeah, he's quite an interesting.
Oh, yeah, I know the business.
Yeah,
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 great,
and
great
he's
business.
also won the Transpac race, which is that big sailing race between California and Hawaii. It's he's quite a
Awesome.
sailor, so he's going to have an interesting perspective on the industry. And in April, we have Steve Mayer. Steve is managing partner of SD Mayer and Associates, which is one of the largest hospitality consulting and accounting practices in the area. He's also been interim president of several restaurant companies while they're reorganizing. Then in May, we have Heidi Kraling, who's the chef owner of the famous award-winning Ensalada Mediterranean restaurant in San Anselmo. And then we have another local San Anselmo person in June, Donna Solomon, who's also the owner of Cucina, which I sold to her over 20 years ago. Also, one of our Dealmaker co-hosts in the near future is going to be Ike of Ike Sandwiches, who's quite an interesting guy. He's got over 100 locations. So with all that being said, I want to thank you all for joining us today. And again, Dean, thank you very much for your candidness and professionalism and great information.
Thank you, Steve.
And if you want to get in touch with me, I can be reached at Steve@Restaurant Realty. And most importantly, everyone take care of yourself and take care of others and stay well. Dean, thanks again.
Thank you, Steve.
Bye.
Enjoy
Take
it
care.
very
Bye.
much.
I enjoyed
Bye.
it as well. Thank you.